Hey everyone, so I'm back with another video, and today we're gonna talk about the most highly talked about ban list video in a while, or an unlimited list video really, to be more accurate. So we're gonna talk about its implications and just why everyone's talking about it, and why it's pretty much unprecedented in unprecedented in recent history. So yeah, let's get into it. So no bans, no limits, no semi-limits. Shock and all, everything I just said happened. There were none of those things in this previous ban list. So what happened? So basically this ban list shows us how Konami makes their choices in terms of the ban list. This mainly says that Konami collects ban list data off of real-life physical Yu-Gi-Oh events. So due to the current pandemic, Konami couldn't collect such data. So they couldn't properly assess the current format, and they couldn't properly make the efficient and needed bans or limits or semi-limits. So that really points to a long debated discussion that's been in the community, that people have said, well, maybe Konami collects data from physical events, or maybe they collect information off of what they see online from videos or just the online community. And this really settles that debate. Unfortunately, Konami doesn't take into account digital tournaments like we commonly thought of, and this kind of makes sense because digital tournaments aren't usually officially sanctioned or approved by Konami. And part of the reason why I feel Konami didn't do any bans, limits, or semi-limits was because part of the problematic cards in this format either haven't released yet, or they were about to release, or they did release during the pandemic, and not many people got to use them, or no people got to use them because we were already in lockdown. And I feel like they thought that it wouldn't be fair to ban those cards before people got the chance to actually use them. So that's part of the reason why I feel they didn't ban it. But with that pretty much brings us into the expectations that people had going into this list. So now that we discuss what happened, we can kind of discuss why people are kind of angry in terms of what they were expecting from this list. So expected bans were things like Jet Synchron, Block Dragon, and maybe arguably True King of All Calamities, but definitely Jet Synchron and Block Dragon. Those were the two main targets, if not Crystron, Halqa, Fibrax. It was basically between those three cards. So other honorary cards such as Dragon Buster, the Destruction Sword, Link Ross, Mecha Phantom Beast, and Mecha Phantom Beast, Aurora Dawn, they were arguably ban worthy or just relegated to being limited in some capacity. But basically stuff like Aurora Dawn, they were argued to be banned, well, at most banned, or at least limited, because they enabled pretty much token spams. And this is part of the reason why these cards were problematic. They either enabled token spamming, or like Dragon Buster, they basically shut off your opponent, and so they turned Yu-Gi-Oh into this kind of clunky form of card game mechanics that you basically, once you got whoever got that strategy off first, the other opponent basically had an unbelievably big uphill battle for them to fight. So that was part of the expectations. And part of the issue is that some of these cards are newly released or haven't been released yet, or they haven't been officially partly sanctioned by Konami to be used in physical play. So I know there were some cards in some of the recently released sets that were okay to be played in maybe the TCG in Europe, or the official card game in Europe, but they haven't been okayed over here in the US or Canada regions and other regions like that. And so it's kind of that weird in between gray area that some cards are okay to use over there in Europe and other places, while here in the West not pretty much, it's not the same case. So that's part of the reason why Konami can really make these bans for the most part. And also, Konami hadn't had enough time to collect data on how like these cards would really interact with the format. Like we said before, that Konami really connects well, collects information off of physical tournament events. So part of the reason why they make their choices is by seeing how these cards have their effect in the metagame, and they try to see how basically problematic these cards are. So in terms, if the top winning decks, if they all use this one card in specific, like Halqua Fibrex, that's probably going to get banned. But Konami hasn't really had the chance to see that through. There have been pretty much no physical events because of this current pandemic, so that's part of the reason why Konami didn't really put out a huge expansive ban list, and I feel that's part of the expectations that people had. They thought, despite the pandemic, Konami was going to do this because they knew pretty much what were the problematic cards, but like we said before, that's not the case. So what did happen, basically? So despite things not being semi-limited, at least, a few things did come off the ban list. Stuff like Altergeist Multi-Faker, Ritual Beast, Ulti Cannahawk, and Necros of Unicorn. They basically came off the ban list. So people were basically saying, Ulti Cannahawk, that's not going to do too much. I mean, that might do something for the Cannahawk players, but it's not going to do all too much. Multi-Faker does make Altergeists a little more competitive since it is their main combo starter. And it kind of looks like this ban list does give Altergeists a boost in general. Especially that Altergeists are about to become a little more viable because they're getting new support pretty much sometime in the future, though it hasn't been confirmed in a hard way, in a very official manner. But they're basically going to get more support in the form of Altergeist Pukari. If you guys don't know what that is, I think right now it's currently just a Jump exclusive promo for the OCG. But on top of Altergeists, Ritual Beasts, they might have some competitive viability that's debatable. But what I found more interesting is that Necros are pretty much at full power now. So those were kind of the things that happened with this ban list. Although there were a few things that happened with this ban list, I think Necros of Unicorn being unbanned or going off the ban list is kind of pretty much a big deal, and we'll get into more of that later. But I know, despite a lot of people saying that this ban list might have been the worst, and there's the other camp saying that this ban list is pretty much predicted and it's not that bad. Part of the positives or the pros that came out of this current ban list is that Multi-Faker, it does allow Altergeists to enter into the competitive scene a lot more seamlessly, or a lot more than they were in previous, in kind of the past format. But basically, if you remember, Altergeists were pretty much around a tier 3 deck around when Thunder Dragons were pretty much popular. Yeah, Thunder Dragons and Orchists. And also, mainly because Altergeists depend off of traps, which Multi-Faker is good at triggering their effects or allowing you to set more traps onto the field and get the whole Altergeist strategy going. This mainly provides a lot of roadblocks to other decks, because a lot of decks, they don't really use traps, and so it adds a little, in my opinion, this is a good thing because it adds a little more dimension into the strategy, because players need to be a little more wary of potential trap cards and interruptions caused by those trap cards in Altergeist specific decks. So this makes cards more like the Solemn cards a little more viable now, and that may help hinder more of the more overpowered decks nowadays. Now, since Multi-Faker can kick off the Altergeist strategies to basically set up your back row and basically have your opponent be a little more, I guess, mindful of what they're going to do, and they can't just run into your field as easily as they could before. But on top of that, we also got almost full powered Necros, and I consider this a positive because full powers Necros, we all remember how devastating that deck was back in the day. I know you could argue now that they're probably not as good, and you're probably right, but they do provide a difficult enough time against the modern day decks. I mean, we haven't really seen that in the real so far, but looking at how devastating they were in the past, it is a good assumption to make that they will provide a really big challenge to some of the decks, if not combining them with other popular cards nowadays to basically make them competitively viable today. So having full powered Necros is a good way to provide a challenge to Adamancipators and the Eldritch decks, which are pretty much the two top decks of the day currently, pretty much. So the reason the way Necros are going to really do that is because they're really aggressive at summons, and they're good at basically pushing a lockdown effects onto your opponents. And that's basically cripples, 90% of what Adamancer players do, and what Eldritch decks do, pretty much. So those were some of the positives, you could say. But now we move on to some of the negatives or the cons of this ban list, which I guess more people are aware of. So not banning, limiting, or semi-eliminating cards does allow a lot of the same problems from the previous format to spill over. The whole Block Dragon combo that enabled Adamancipators to easily summon Block Dragon onto the field, and then also Block Dragon allowing Adamancipators to essentially search 3 monsters from its effect from the deck is extremely insane. So that's, banning Block Dragon is not basically going to take the wind out of Adamancipators' strategy. It just prevents them from becoming really problematic and doing the really unfair combos that they normally do. So this whole Block Dragon combo allowed players to search 3 monsters from the deck off of its effect, and you could potentially search more if you search the correct targets off of that effect. So basically banning Block Dragon would prevent Adamancipators from being extremely unfair. So that's one of the cons of this previous ban list, or anti-ban list, you could say. But that was just one of the problems. But not banning Jet Synchron or Halqifibrax does enable more of the special summon loops, and it does allow people to climb up the link ladder a little more quickly. So this is the other problem. I guess you could pretty much chalk them up to be their own separate problem, but there's a certain camp of people that are saying ban Jet Synchron, that's what allows Halqifibrax to come out, and there's another camp of people saying ban Halqifibrax, that's the thing that allows you to special summon more targets. And these two cards currently in the meta and in the previous format before, they were big problem cards. Halqifibrax does allow you to summon out another monster, and it allows you to climb up the link ladder very easily, and Jet Synchron got out Halqifibrax very easily. So they kind of work hand in hand, and though you can say Jet Synchron is the main issue because it summons out Halqifibrax, but personally I don't feel that's the problem, and I will address that in a future video. Watch out for that. But being that's the current situation, that's another problem that this previous ban list failed to address. And other cards, I guess honorary ban list cards, are Auroradon and Linkcross. They simply add to the problem, because nothing got banned. You have Auroradon, you have Linkcross, along with Jet Synchron and Halqifibrax in the same format, causing enormous issues. Halqifibrax already allows for the crazy summon loops that everyone's been complaining about, along with Auroradon that allows you to summon a bunch of tokens onto the field, and along with Linkcross, it pretty much does the same thing. You kind of don't have to depend on the Crystron Needle Fiber card that a lot of people have been using. You basically can use Auroradon and Linkcross for kind of pretty much almost like a budget replacement, you could say. But yeah, that's pretty much wraps up all the cons of this previous ban list. And before I forget to mention it, I know this ban list has upset a lot of people, but if there have been online tournaments going on so far, I don't think this is an online tournament, but I know there's a pro play tournament that is kind of forming kind of their own ban list that kind of is a response to this current ban list, and they're trying to make the certain bans or limits to the cards that they think should have happened, and they're trying to organize this event for everyone to have fun and basically kind of be in a competitive sphere, even though this is not officially Konami sanctioned. So I would just suggest giving that a look. It seems seems pretty fun in my opinion, and could be interesting. But yeah, with that pretty much wraps up the video, and I hope you guys enjoyed it. And if you guys want to support content like this in the future, I would really appreciate it. And I mean, you don't have to, but I'd really appreciate it, whether if it's just supporting me in general, liking these videos, not even just hitting the like button, but just sitting there enjoying these videos. It really warms my heart, and it really does bring a smile to my face. And just knowing these videos help you throughout the day and just give you a sense of joy. But thank you so much for watching. I'll catch you in the next video. All right, bye.